I was someone who's always chasing highs. So I wanted to enjoy life. And that's why I became a trader, because you can make more money there. It was very simple. I had fun with my friends. I used to go out all the time. And then I found something better.
What do you think really is the purpose of our lives, and also what is your purpose?
You know, I'm on gardening leave between jobs at the moment, and the Ukraine war is happening. They knew that I was traveling out there to do food distributions for refugees.
Really? You went to Ukraine?
You know, this was trade. These are like financial market people who just met us at the airport and flew out and served people for weeks.
Must have been super dangerous. I often ask this question, that do we always need to have some struggle to really remind ourselves what is it to really be human?
Where do we stop? What, 1%? Half a percent? Before we destroy all the wildlife on the planet? Professor Paul from Oxford University said the biggest thing we can do for climate change is give up eating animal products.
So welcome Hanuman Das ji to Pragyan podcast, and I've spent the whole day with you, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. The last 3 days have been historic in the way that this is the Global Spirituality Mahotsav. We've never had over 100 organizations, spiritual organizations being represented in one place. And as you witnessed, we had the president and the vice president and everyone coming together and really saying, this is incredible in these moments where there's so much war and divisiveness all around us. So I really want to know, I want to check in on you and say, how is your inner peace coming along?
I mean, it feels much more nourished after being here and amongst so many different learned and wonderful saintly beings. We had this wonderful time with Daiji today, which was very special, kind of sharing wisdom from the Upanishads and, inner journeys, which was really, really wonderful to be around. So, yeah, it's been a blessing to be here for 3 days.
Fantastic. I want to understand, I'm really curious, how did your name become Hanuman Das?
Okay. So my birth name is Hemal Randawala. Hemal is like, I guess, Himal, which is snow and Himalayas.
Mm-hmm.
I had a spiritual teacher by the name of Ram Dass, who was Richard Alpert. He was a Harvard professor. And
yeah, he's very well known. I've read his books.
Yeah, so as soon as I read Be Here Now, I was hooked. It was like someone phoned me from there and kind of said, chase this person with all your life. So, I wrote letters to him. I got in touch, emailed. We started talking, became close, used to have video calls with him and talk from London to Hawaii. And then, picked up my 2 kids, 2 babies at the time, and said, look, we're traveling to Hawaii with my wife. And we went across the world to go spend time with him at his home. And he gave me the name Hanuman Das and, told me to do Go Dharmic's work, and loved the whole mission, and was really kind of telling me that, service to humanity and is service to God, is service to the divine. So that's been kind of the thing. And he gave me the name and also shared a mantra for me to be able to chant. And it's been to chant Ram's name again and again, or to chant, I am loving awareness. So to realize that, I kind of look at it in the way of bhakti as well as jnana yoga. So it's a kind of combination of the two. When I think about it, this is my personal reflection on the mantra. He said, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. So when he gave me that name, he also shared these 2 mantras. And it was just very, unique and special time to be with, a great living master. I consider, he was just
very, very special. I can imagine.
Love pouring out of his eyes, Yeah.
Beautiful. And what is it that you were going through in your life when you said it was almost as if he picked up the phone on me after you read the book? But was there a struggle, or was there something that you were yearning for at that moment in your life?
A lot of people kind of talk about that, don't they? That there's a kind of, a moment of anguish or despondency, like the first chapter of the Gita is, Vishada Yoga. I don't think I had a real Vishada Yoga. I think, I guess, I feel like I was just like a cat being picked up by the scruff of the neck and placed
That's amazing.
In that way. I don't think it was this great, moment of change in direction. I was just like, okay, this is what I do, and now this is what I do. Because I was a trader, I was working financial. I had a trading firm with a whole bunch of traders trading derivatives, and then felt a completely different calling. So I don't think there was this big moment of depression or anxiety or anything like that. It was like I was someone who's always chasing highs. So I wanted to enjoy life. And that's why I became a trader, because you can make more money there. It was very simple. I had fun with my friends. I used to go out all the time. And then I found something better or higher or greater. And it's like, better than any drink that you could drink, or better than any food or hotel that you could purchase. Here's unconditional love and happiness shining through his eyes. So why wouldn't I, right? It's very simple.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And I'm glad you say that, because often people feel like they need to go to spirituality, or they need to go to something else, or go deeper only when there is struggle, only when there's mishap, or only when there is any sort of, deep inflection points in life. And so it's wonderful that you say that it's not that my life wasn't great. I just knew that it could be greater. And therefore you really took that step. I want to talk a little bit about, you're the co-founder of Go Dharmic.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. Yes, Go Dharmic. And can you help me understand, when you started it, what was the mission and what is the mission today? Because you've been doing this for around 15 years now, right? If I'm correct. And so I just want to know a little bit about, how did you start? What were some of the transitions that you've taken in the organization, and where do you stand today?
Yeah, so I think it would go to the Guru Neem Karoli Baba. That's where it kind of roots back to, is that when a Western devotee once asked him, how can I raise my Kundalini? He would say, go feed people. And then, how can I become enlightened? Go and serve the poor. Yeah. That was it. It was like, he was saying, let's not think about yourself for a moment. Let's go help someone who's in need. And through the act of service, you'll realize who you are, or you'll lessen your self-identification or ego self, or whatever you want to call it, and just, realize that we're more connected than we actually conceive in our minds. And I put it akin to the kind of bodhisattva path of Buddhism. I think Hanumanji really represents that, and he just wants to serve. I always loved that kind of story about when Sita Mata was giving everybody gifts after the Great War. Everybody accepted these necklaces and jewels and precious diamonds, and Hanuman was given some jewels, and he started biting it, chewing it, and Lakshman laughingly asks him, what are you doing? Like laughing at it, mocking him. He said, I'm looking for Ram's name in this. I can't see it in this thing. I'm looking for Rama. Where is it in this jewels? And then Lakshman says, well, if you felt like that, why wouldn't you have Ram within your body? You should cut your body open. And then we have that beautiful scene, which is like known all over India, of Hanuman tearing his heart open and God existing within him, the indwelling self. So that for me, this idea of service is very, very, it's a sadhana. Service is a sadhana. It's a spiritual activity of service. And I immediately wanted to feed people based on the exposure to this spiritual wisdom, Neem Karoli Baba, and the ideas. It really wasn't something I've thought about. Why? Or, I didn't strategize. There's no document for it. There's nothing. It's just like, love all, feed all, serve. It's very simple. Just go do it. So Go Dharmic really is like go, the English word, just do something today, relieve suffering. And Dharma, our responsibility or our duty or our purpose. I like purpose. It's a nice word for it.
No, I love that. And therefore, I think what I really liked about what you said is this complete surrender and the action-orientedness that you have at Go Dharmic, where you just go out and start doing things and everything else then just follows, is how I understand Go Dharmic has grown. And you spoke about purpose. So what do you think really is the purpose of our lives, and also what is your purpose with Go Dharmic?
Well, that's a big question, but I think if we think about the dharma of sugar, I guess it would be to be sweet.
Yeah.
The dharma of fire, to produce heat or to produce light. Then we ask the question, what is the dharma of humanity? And we have all these ancient scriptures and texts and wisdom and profound teachings that explore that idea. But I think it's quite simple. The dharma of humanity is to be humane.
Beautiful.
Is to live out our humanity to its truest sense. And I believe that to be compassion. And like my favorite dharma shastra, as it were, would be the Mahabharata, because I think it really subtly explores dharma in a really beautiful way. And I understand that the core message is karuna, compassion. There's like Yudhishthir, when he was walking up the Himalayas, and he has this dog that follows him. And where I live in England, everybody loves dogs.
Yes.
So this is my favorite story to tell. And the dog follows him up the Himalayas, but he's really trying to leave the world. He's given up, with his kingdom and, everything that he's done. And when he's invited to come to Swargaloka, he says, I'll come, but I want to bring my dog. And the dog's there, like looking at him, I can imagine, and kind of, and he says, this dog won't survive without me. And nobody should ever neglect anybody who's looking to them for support, or, somebody needs help. We shouldn't ever let them down. He gives a beautiful speech on compassion. And I really look at it in a maybe spiritual and allegorical way, that the Mahabharata is presenting us with the choice that he had, choosing Swargaloka or caring for the dog, choosing heaven or caring for those around us. And he chooses the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog manifests as dharma. So beautiful.
Yeah.
So the dharma, like the Mahabharata is telling us, that the dharmic choice is to care for others. It's compassion. It's caring for the world. And someone once asked Neem Karoli Baba, how can I get to heaven? And he said, why do you want to go to heaven? Can't you see this is it? Let's make this a heaven for everyone.
Yeah.
How do we make this a heaven? Just like here, visiting the grounds and seeing the politeness and the hospitality and sweetness, like God is a guest, here, and everybody's, very loving. And I feel that exemplifies that spiritual quality of, compassion and care and loving one another. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think, what you describe often coming from the corporate world for me seems very utopian. And so, I often ask these questions on the podcast to many of the leaders who've come earlier, that, how do we really incentivize compassion and kindness, in the corporate setup? Because you come from there, you're a trader. I mean, you were a trader. And so you know how cutthroat that culture can be. And while you sort of left that behind, I'm sure there are still remnants of it, and you still understand what that world still looks like. I'm sure you have friends in that world. So I really want to understand from you, with what you've seen, the difference between when you were a trader to now go dharmic, where your purpose and your goal is very altruistic. How do you really align the two and integrate them in a way that we often, we should make kindness and compassion in some way incentivized, because that's the only way it's going to become a culture, become a norm?
That's a really brilliant point and question. And early on in my journey, I didn't think they were as, they couldn't have been further apart, the two worlds. My first teaching in the world of trading was, this is a dog-eat-dog world.
Yeah.
Like, I had performed really well as a junior trader, and I expected a certain raise or profit percentage. We used to get percentages of our performance. And the manager at the time said, look, this is a dog-eat-dog world. That was the first. Yeah. The first teaching from Maharaji was, love is the strongest medicine. It's more powerful than electricity. So they couldn't really be further apart.
Right.
The two worlds are very, very different. And now, as I've kind of progressed in that journey, I really feel that the difference is not that much. Like, there are very kind traders. There are people in the financial markets who are incredibly compassionate. And there are people who are sitting in ashrams who can be despicably rude and, aggressive and,
True.
full of hate.
Yeah.
So I've been practicing seeing the whole world as one and loving the dog and the dog eater. That's for my aspiration, is to try and not see one place as completely sacred and another place as, really bad. Maharaji would say all rivers are Varanasi. All rivers are the Ganges. All land is Varanasi. That's what, like, Bharat Varsh is the whole world.
Yeah.
If we look at it in that way, that's the expansive spiritual view. So now we have wonderful traders who commit, support to Go Dharmic. They help, financial market firms who come together and, organize events in support. We have people from the industry who climb 3 mountains in 48 hours to raise funds for our causes and, do work. And so, really, I guess something that Daiji said today, it's not faith that there's anything wrong with. It's those with faith, who often can be the troublemakers. And I think it's the same with anything, whether it's money or whether it's, business or anything that we're doing. We all inherently love.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's instinctive.
Yeah.
And then because we often get hurt when we have loved, we shut down and feel like, being strong or going to the more grosser tendencies is going to cut us through and help us survive. But I think we all fundamentally, like you said, do deeply care and love. You spoke about how you're combining your trading world and how your friends are coming together and helping you do or take initiatives in Go Dharmic, which is then you are channeling that money into good causes and better causes. Can you give me a few examples so that, I also understand what's really happening at Go Dharmic?
Well, from a fundraising perspective, you would have individuals from the industry who have gone and, like I said, done tremendous treks. I mean, one gentleman did a marathon across the Himalayas for us.
Oh.
Which is tremendous, to do that. Then, other people have gone, said that, look, I'm on gardening leave between jobs at the moment and the Ukraine war is happening. They knew that I was traveling out there to do food distributions for refugees.
Really?
On the border.
You went to Ukraine?
Yeah, at the border of Ukraine and Poland.
Oh.
So where all the refugees next to the Lviv border.
Yeah.
And, this was trade. These are like financial market people who just kind of, met us at the airport and flew out and served people for weeks.
Must have been super dangerous. How did you guys cope with the danger around you, the physical danger?
So I think the closest we were was probably 15 miles from a bomb going off. But we were at the border, and there was probably around 30 to 40,000 refugees a day pouring through from Ukraine into Poland, and they'd walked sometimes through forests, sometimes, traveled across the country with no money and support. There was grandparents and, wives with just their children because all the men were staying back to fight, and just, carrying their pets in little boxes and all their possessions in a suitcase and not really knowing where to go. But, the ability to help someone in that situation gives tremendous satisfaction like you can't describe. And sometimes when we think very scientifically about social giving and impact, we always want to, assess things in a kind of economic capacity.
Very quantifiable. We get very tangible.
Right. Like how much aid do we deliver? How much impact do we make for this? But sometimes, one of the things that struck me being on the border there was one of our volunteers bought 5 boxes of sweets. Just little, 2p sweets. And he was giving them to the children. We were giving them to the children as they came across the border. And this must have cost about £10, to buy these sweets. But to see a child's face light up when he receives a sweet, after all that experience that they've just got, was one of the, I think, the best social impact things that we could do is make that child smile for a moment in all this difficulty. And that smile can be contagious. And, through all of that difficult moment that these people have gone through, I felt like, we created a little bit of relief and a moment of happiness for that person or that young child. So it's not as dharma sukshmosti, Yudhishthira will say. It's a subtle matter. It's hidden within the cave of our hearts.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, this very quantifiable thing. And I think the humanitarian work of the world needs more dharmic influence because it's very, I would use the term Western Superman.
Yeah.
Like we dive into a zone and like we're going to fix everything for the kind of developing countries. It doesn't really respect the indigenous nature of various places. And I feel like the Indic traditions, the Hindu traditions exemplify diversity. I mean, just being here at this Mahotsav, hundreds of different schools. I think, what is it, 300 different organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. We have representatives from over 300 organizations, around close to 50,000 people who've come in the last 3 days. So it's been incredible.
It's like a World Economic Forum for spirituality.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have been anywhere else in the world that would have put such an event together. So I feel like we need more of that softer, more Devi Sampad, kind of divine qualities, or, kinder, softer, more holistic approach to humanitarian and environmental work in the world.
I have to tell you, I still have shivers going down my spine after you told me about that story about that kid. It's moving. I mean, I'm sure in that moment, like you said, that smile would have been priceless. Just seeing how the small things which we often take for granted bring so much relief and so much love. And for you and for your team, while you, didn't think about putting your life on the line and went there and served all these people. Just incredible. I mean, absolutely amazing. Deep respect for what you do and your work.
I think, to be with suffering is, Maharaji would say, I love suffering. It brings me closer to God. He would say stuff like that, but we are not enlightened beings or, kind of working that way. What I want is for us to expand our consciousness towards serving people in need. I mean, during India, the Delta variant, when it was ravaging kind of North India, we were working 18 hours a day, all our volunteers, trying to coordinate oxygen for hospitals, for individuals. And, what struck me was I got a phone call from a CEO of a major US tech company, which I won't name, huge, probably one of the most,
the largest or the biggest, yeah.
Very special. And he said, Hanuman Das, I need to get oxygen to my father. He's in Delhi.
God.
It's lockdown. So we all need help.
Yeah.
Maharaji said, serve the poor. And then somebody asked him, say, who's poor? Everyone. Everyone's poor before Christ. That was his words. And so, that happened during that Delta variant. It wasn't just like poor people in slums that needed help. It was every one of us.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I think COVID changed many people's lives, including mine. And that's because it was a great equalizer. When you are in front of disease and death, it doesn't matter who you are.
You lived there. You were there. Were you there during?
Yeah, I was in Delhi. And it was just the worst time because it was quiet and all you could hear was ambulance sounds, the sounds of the siren of all the ambulances going on the roads, because you could feel there were, footage of people parked in cars, just gasping for breath and not getting any space in hospitals. Because
did you lose anyone close to you?
Luckily not. I was lucky, but there were friends who lost parents. There were others who lost their sisters and siblings, and it was a very, very difficult time. But, we did this kindness summit right after that here in Kanha. And it was so amazing when I think about that. When I go back, we were all so giving. We suddenly got to know our neighbors who we had not met in years or didn't know or didn't care about. People were feeding and making food for unknown people in their societies. You came in all the way to step in to help somebody and provide an oxygen cylinder or oxygen concentrators. Because there was struggle, we came together.
Yeah.
But now that we are back to, our regular routine, it's so easy for us just to quickly go back to our normal slumber of it's all about me.
Yeah.
It's all about my well-being and am I making enough money or not? Am I in the right place or not? And so, I often ask this question that do we always need to have some struggle to really remind ourselves what is it to really be human?
It probably comes back to that Vishada yoga. Like we had despondency.
Yeah.
And then that forced people to question what it's all about. When we're so stuck in our minds and our egos, then we don't really want to live in the heart much. And I heard that, I didn't see them, but people told me that around Mumbai there were dolphins.
Yeah.
And the air was clear.
True.
And from Delhi you could see like from parts the Himalayan peaks, of places. So, nature was healing itself as well, during that period. And I really feel horrified at some of the statistics that are out there now. Like, if you think about mammals on Earth, what percentage do you think are wildlife now? If you were to hazard a guess.
It must be a very tiny number.
Just 4%.
So
96% is humans and farm animals.
Mm.
So where do we stop? What, 1%? 0.5% before we destroy all the wildlife on the planet?
Yeah.
And so I think it requires spiritual vision to be able to heal that, because just living in the mind and just solutionizing. I was in Parliament last year, and a lord was just jokingly saying about the problem of foxes in Wimbledon Common, that we should just shoot them all.
Oh my God.
And it was just joking around, but they so loosely use violence. So I think we need ahimsa. We need to really explore that and bring it onto a more global stage. And that's what we're trying to do with Go Dharmic, is really advocate for ideas like ahimsa.
And tell me more about how you're doing that. Just give me some anecdotes so I get a feel of what's happening.
So we held an event called COP, at COP, called Ahimsa and the Environment.
Oh.
And we had the president of COP speak. It was Alok Sharma.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first Hindu president of COP, UK parliamentarian. And it was all about trying to present non-violence on World Leaders' Day and bringing different voices for non-violence together.
Beautiful.
Because I think the way we treat animals, the way we're treating the forest, the way we're looking at nature in general, unless we reduce the harm that we're causing to nature, there's no way we can, survive. We're going towards a mass extinction from an environmental perspective. But I think I'm very hopeful by the youth. People like Vanessa Nakate in Africa, or Greta Thunberg, who speak up. Just go and sit in front of Parliament and do something. And young people care about the planet, and they have, if given the opportunity, will help us to kind of, maybe my generation and older generations are too stuck in their ways to kind of really change. But I think, the more we empower young people, they'll see things with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And say, oh my God, we're going to lose the dolphins. And it's great to see how many endangered plant species you're protecting here at Kanha, and exploring that. So, I think it really has a multiplying knock-on effect unless we do these kind of things.
No, surely. And, very beautifully you said that, because I'm also just, revisiting the Bhagavad Gita. And I think a lot of it is to do with the relationship between the jiva and the prakriti. I think the minute you feel as the human that you are the center of the world, I think that's when you look at nature in a very extractive way. And I think the minute you see it, that my relationship with Prakriti is actually very symbiotic, then you often give precedence to what's happening in nature and have much more respect, to your point on how earlier we would, bow down to a tree before cutting it because we needed the wood, but there was still a lot of gratitude, a lot of respect that, I am cutting you because I really need you, to now where we just do it because of greed and less because out of need. So incredible work that you're doing. And
there's that. Well, I really like what you just said there about taking what you need and looking at it like an offering when you do need that. Every time I take a meal, I recite verse 424, Brahma Panam, Brahma Vir, Brahmanahudam, and it really reminds me that that the plate is Brahman, the food is Brahman, which I'm offering into the digestive fire, which is Brahman, to Brahman. For one who looks at the world in this way, all he sees is Brahman. So that's very beautiful. And I think we need to look at it in that way to actually tread more gently. One of my favorite verses from the Mahabharata is spoken by Savitri. So it's a female voice, not a male voice, which you see predominantly in the spiritual world. And I think Mahabharata has some very powerful female voices in it, which I love. Like, there's not much ancient wisdom that has such powerful voices, but the one person that I feel most truly defines Sanatana Dharma to the world is Savitri. And she says, Ahimsa satyam akrodo dhanameta chatushtayam ajata shatru seveta esha dharma sanatanaha. Ahimsa, satyam, akrodo, and dhanam. So non-violence, truth, non-anger, and charity. This is the Sanatana Dharma. And
amazing.
For me, if you think about all the different types of schools of thoughts, whether Sikhism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism and Vaishnava and Shaiva and Lokayat and yoga schools and Raja and this and all of them, I feel there's actually another school of Dharma, which is a framework for all of the schools. Because every school wants to relieve suffering. The goal is either moksha or heaven or liberation or something. So if the goal is to relieve suffering, then everyone accepts Dharma as the core thing that ties the whole thing together. So I think there's really something in that kind of understanding of Dharma, being non-violence, being compassion, being kindness, being friendship, being love. And we don't teach this in schools. I don't know about whether you studied compassion.
No, I mean, I think it's so unfortunate that in schools we're still learning. I think some schools are changing now. I think the new age schools are trying to teach more life skills, more values. I fortunately went to a school which is called The School. It's a Jiddu Krishnamurti Foundation school. And so I was very lucky and privileged to have gone through that value-based education where it was all about, like you said, a lot about compassion, kindness, becoming a good human being before everything else. The rest will follow. But first, can you just look at yourself and become a kind, holistic person? And what does it really mean to be a good human being? I think just defining that. So, but you're right. I mean, these life skills are less and less taught in schools. I think our education systems are, far more around the same success metrics, which is, power, money, and, which job do you have and where you're working. And I think status symbols, I think those, from what you're saying, needs to change if society needs to change.
Yeah, and I think it's true for spirituality as much as it is for everything else. Like, you can have a huge temple or, huge following, huge audience. But if we think about the spiritual idea that to see God within yourself and within all living beings and within all living beings and within yourself, like the Gita says, then surely if somebody was suffering, somebody's hungry, somebody's in a disaster and in difficulty, or someone's like facing human trafficking, we could do something to change that. Then a truly spiritual being will do everything in their power to do that, because they've realized that they are one with all of those people. So my friend Peter Singer, he's a professor at Stanford. He uses this example that what would you do if the child was hit by a car and was on the road and everything, all the cars were just driving past and ignoring the child? Do you think that's bad? And everyone, of course, puts their hands up and says bad. And then he says, well, what if I told you that you're actually letting that happen right now because you could buy a mosquito net for $15, which could potentially save a life in Africa of, a child, or a meal for a child in Gaza who's, orphaned and facing food poverty, or someone like that. So we actually face that ethical dilemma that we are allowing that suffering to take place when we can actually do more about it than we currently are. So I think while there's an inward spiritual element, we also need to be, I would call it engaged spirituality, like
Yeah.
engaged in the world, and making a difference, like Martin Luther King Jr. did, or Mahatma Gandhi, based on his spiritual understanding, wanted to serve the world.
No, amazing. I think, you spoke about trade-offs, and I think every day the choices we make in our lives, we have those trade-offs about what you said. Do I want to spend $15 in buying something that I don't need? Or should I go ahead and donate it or put it towards a better cause where someone else's life can change just with that money, which for most of us is not that much significant, right? I mean, we live our lives just the way we are. If I was to give that $15 somewhere else, what do you think we can do every day in our lives when we think about these choices? How can they be a little bit different? What is it that, folks who are listening to us, or just even me, what is it that I can do in my daily life that I make those more thoughtful choices where in some capacity I'm not veering towards greed, but making my life simpler and simpler?
Sure. And these are just my opinions. These
Yeah.
are by no means kind of, rules. I think one of Professor Poore from Oxford University said the biggest thing we can do for climate change as well as to reduce suffering on the earth is to give up eating animal products. So we can live perfectly well.
With a plant-based diet.
Completely plant-based, but
Yeah.
we don't need to buy into the slaughter and the suffering of a mass scale of animals. So I think that's a very easy choice, increasingly easy choice in the world for us to live a gentler, more non-violent way. I know it's quite contentious in a place like India, which has such a love for cows. And it's so sweet, the love for cows. But I often think, all this wonderful, I love cows myself. But where are the bulls?
Yeah.
There's gaushalas, but there's no bullshalas. And people keep the cows because they produce milk, but the bulls are being slaughtered. And then also in the West, maybe here as well, milking cows are slaughtered in an early age, and
Yes.
kind of, it's a tremendous system of suffering that then is offered in temples, they're offered to the gods and consumed and so on. So I think questioning how non-violence can be applied in simple ways. And I think sometimes, this is another thing that Peter Singer said to me, which I really enjoyed. He said, you don't need to make huge trade-offs. Like a $40 watch will do perfectly as well as a $300 watch. So if you could buy a really decent watch for $40, in fact, some would argue that would probably last more than your, designer nice watch, and spend $260 on, educating some children who couldn't afford, their school fees. That would be a kind of approach. So doing things which are not a huge trade-off, that don't really make a significant impact on your life, but can make a significant impact for others. So I think donating to charities and good causes, which are, genuinely making a positive impact in the world. I think we were very generous during COVID. There's been a mass shortage of donations and charitable giving across the field because of increased cost of living globally. There's been a higher cost for people to survive themselves, so that they've kind of tightened with their charitable giving, and it's had a knock-on effect. Where I live in the UK, I think 1 in 4 families is facing some level of food poverty. Children go to school hungry.
Oh my God. And we look at the UK as a developed country. So
or like places like Los Angeles in the US, some of the biggest slums in the world. We operate in Skid Row, and it's literally something you wouldn't even imagine actually exists. The amount of poverty that's there, thousands of people living in tents and so on. But
I used to work for WhatsApp, and I used to go often to the Bay Area, to Menlo Park. That's where the headquarters are, and we would go into the city sometimes in San Francisco, and this is pre-COVID, and there was so much homelessness. It's like you have the richest people living there, and yet there's so many people on the streets for different reasons. So I can totally imagine what's happening in LA.
Yeah, I think it's that Gandhiji's quote, isn't it? The world has enough for everybody's need, but not enough for a single person's greed. And you know, a handful of people own half the world's wealth. So I think spirituality has a strong role to play in leveling that. In fact, I think it's the only thing that can. But at the same time, just to open our hearts and give as much as possible. But maybe even if we're not able to, you know, give financially to a charity, I think people can give their time. Like, can you spare an hour a week to volunteer? You work on WhatsApp. You worked with WhatsApp. Great. We have 385 WhatsApp groups that do volunteer work around the world and need coordinating help. It might be an hour a week of organizing some of those groups for someone like a charity or an organization doing some good work in the world. So I think you can give time, you can give talent, and then probably last you could give treasure, you know, like financial support to good causes. And if you can't even do that, you know, you can't do any of those things, be nice to the people around you and be kind to, you know, treat people equally, smile to your neighbors, you know, be kind to people and send love to people and, you know, be supportive. I don't think it's enough just to not harm people.
True.
Dalai Lama's quote, peace is not the absence of war. It's the manifestation of human compassion.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely.
I love that so much. Isn't that beautiful? Like, I have, you know, people, I'm sure you'll have it resonate. Like, they don't really do much, but then they're not peaceful or happy. So they could be just sitting at home watching TV, relaxing, sitting around, but they're not actually that happy or they're not peaceful. So only when a person is like compassionate and kind and helpful and service orientated, will they, you know, you'll generally find them being quite peaceful and content and happy.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think, you know, it's beautiful what you said, because to the greed part, right? I had this thing, you know, where I was just going on this, you know, this hoarding spree, which we sometimes get into. And at some point I paused and I was like, okay, every time I feel like buying something on Amazon, the value that it is, I'm going to put it in a piggy bank, right? And it really showed me how much money that I was willing to go shop and waste. And my life was perfectly fine without all of those things. And then I just picked that up and went and donated it somewhere, and gave me such immense joy, which I don't think any of the items that I would have bought would have given me. And I think these are the small things which have changed my life in many ways, where I feel far more fulfilled. And the second thing about non-violence, which you said, right? Even in Daji often says this, and we have this practice here called, you know, there's non-violent communication. And there's a book that's been written, I'm forgetting the author's name, but we have combined that with heartful communication. And so often he says non-violence does not just mean that, you know, you're not hitting anyone, but it's also about at all times making sure that you're not hurting anyone, even with your words. So if you're that thoughtful about how you're interacting, hopefully you'll get there, you know, to this non-violent world that we're talking about and not hurting anyone. I just want to wrap this conversation up with one last question, which is, you know, you're meeting so many leaders. I opened your Instagram, you know, you're with King Charles and you're hanging out with all the influential people. How is GoDharmic really advocating for a lot of this so that at this leadership level, this change happens? Because, you know, we'll continue to have these conversations unless these leaders who make decisions actually think about this day in and day out and think about collaboration and bringing change together and think of the world as one and not as my area is just my country and my boundaries, but what can I do? Because climate change is one of those examples. You know, we all know what we're doing, and yet everyone comes into COP and everyone thinks about what is the interest for my country, for my GDP growth, for my development, and what is it that my voters want? And then everything else goes out of the window. So what is it that you feel leaders can do, and what is GoDharmic, you know, in your own capacity doing to bring some of this shift?
You know, when I was with Ram Dass, I wanted to write this book on the Upanishads with him, which I've not shared with anybody, but it's been maybe 13 or 14 years. And when I told him that I wanted to do this, he said, I will give you my everything. Like, I'll give you everything I have to give. And this is someone who's had a stroke. Half of his body's like, you know, debilitated. He's not able to kind of really even move. He's in tremendous pain. He's in the late stages of his life. And he's saying to me, I will give you my everything.
Yeah.
So that's all we can do, is we are doing exactly what we want to do. And so
so true.
Right? Like Daji said yesterday, you know, if you wanted peace, what kind of peace do you want? You know, are you working for that? And I think we're doing exactly what we want to do. So if we want to relentlessly serve, I look at Hanumanji's example. You know, his tail was on fire. So he lit the whole of Lanka with that tail. He used something that was suffering and bad for him as a tool to create, you know, the result that he wanted to get. And for me, it's just going back to that simple message that bring people together. Connectedness. We're all connected. We're all one. Love people. Unconditional love. Be friends with people. Go Dharmic for me is a very decentralized platform. We can have everyone, you know, working together. And it doesn't necessarily need to be with us. It could be, you know, I love to see that, hey, we do all these distributions in cities around the world, food distributions. And then I see other people popping up and doing similar things. And it's like big sign, love all, feed all, serve all. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the true mission, is to inspire people to not just give rich to poor, but heart to heart.
Beautiful.
You know, we all one. We all walking each other home.
Amazing. And what is it that, you know, people who want to contribute in some capacity and join your mission, what is it, you know, what do the tactics look like for us to be part of that?
You can download a Go Dharmic app.
Okay.
And then, you know, find out where you are based, what kind of thing you're interested in doing, how you'd like to contribute and serve and be part of that community of people spreading loving awareness, as well as helping people on various campaigns. It might be, you know, going out and doing a weekly food distribution, helping the homeless or supporting school families. It might be fundraising for a school that needs redeveloping. We've been present at 180 disasters.
Wow.
And our goal is that any disaster at the moment in India which takes place, affecting more than 5,000 people, Go Dharmic sends a team. So we need a lot of people.
Yeah.
We need volunteers for all of these SDGs are areas that we can work on. We've got a forest in the Sundarbans. People can travel there and spend a month helping to replant mangrove trees in the Sundarbans. But I think it's really extreme. Like, you could give your life to this, or you can give 10 minutes a week and then think about what can I do? This is in my calendar. For 10 minutes a week, I'm going to support Go Dharmic with writing a peace letter to my local MPs or my leaders, just to spread some peace and friendship. It's a practice I do every day. I send a peace letter to people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll send you one.
I'd love to receive it. But I love the flexibility that you have. So this is amazing, where if I have 10 minutes and I have, you know, a whole lifetime, like you said, I can still find a way to come and contribute. And I think that's incredible. A little Tweety bird told me that, you know, you hang out with Virat Kohli and Anushka Sharma a lot. They're your friends. And I just want to understand, you know, how do you get a lot of these very influential people to come and join you and join your voice? Because that's what's really required, where, you know, we are influencing on Instagram, but we're also influencing in various different ways. And I love the fact that, you know, you're getting some of these folks to also influence towards the right cause.
Well, I'm not doing anything. You know, I'm really honest that, you know, I don't feel I'm doing anything. I'm just being picked up like a cat and placed into various situations to do certain things. For me, it's all Maharaji. You know, it's all the divine doing that, you know, work. And I'm just trying to be the best spoon that I can be for that prasad to be distributed. I hope I can be a clean spoon, and I hope Go Dharmic can be a clean spoon for that distribution. But for me, it's nothing else. And it's not only like when I say Maharaji, for me, that's not a person, just the individual. It's all of it. It's that doorway to Brahman that, you know, is all love, unconditional love. And I think, you know, when Ram Dass first went to America, after spending time in India, he was teaching the Gita to Westerners. Now, neither did he know Sanskrit, neither did he have any idea about anything, but he was called to do that. And he spoke to someone about it, and he said, I'm not sure if I should be teaching the Gita. I don't really know that about it. And they said, the Gita is Krishna. You just need to share it. The Gita will share itself.
Yeah.
And he just said, look, I just sat amongst people, and Maharaji just poured the words out. There's nothing that we're doing. This is, a purpose. It's a dharma. It's a grace to be able to do this work for all of us who are involved. And I think that everyone that we've connected to, there is a rhyme and a reason for it. But we don't ask anyone for anything. We never have done. We never will do. If people want to, be involved in a heart-based mission, then, it's more outward and engaged in terms of trying to make a difference in the poorest people that we can reach. And the rest is kind of, everyone needs to do that. It's our purpose.
Absolutely. No, this is a great place to wrap the conversation, because this is where we started, where you said, when you went to, your purpose of starting Go Dharmic was being that cat, right? And I think it also really aligns with, with your name, which is just all about surrender. So great, absolutely amazing talking with you. I've learned a lot, and I think we're all conduits, and that's how I feel when I serve for Heartfulness, which is, we're just conduits of doing the right work. That's it. And like you said, just making sure that we're doing the right thing and doing the best that we can. So thank you so much for sharing this with me. And I'm hoping to go ahead and, of course, collaborate with Heartfulness and Go Dharmic in very many ways, because there's so many overlapping agendas where I think together we can do so much.
No, I'm looking forward to it, and I think we'll be friends for life.
Totally. Looking forward to that.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Ram Ram. Thank you.